Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehani and these are the headlines. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg says the Taliban must do more to fulfill their commitments to the Doha peace agreement. At a news conference in Brussels, he said the Taliban must break ties with international terrorists for any possible withdrawal of the foreign troops from Afghanistan. The Taliban have previously accused the US of violating the deal by carrying out airstrikes against them. Islamabad says New Delhi has militarized the Indian Ocean, of which Pakistan is an important stakeholder. Addressing the International Maritime Conference in Karachi, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said India's hostile policies are a threat to peace and security in the region and beyond. Meanwhile, Navy Chief Admiral Amjad Khan Niazi said efforts are being made to secure the maritime boundaries of Pakistan. Myanmar's military has warned anti-coup protesters that they could face up to 20 years in prison if they obstruct the armed forces. Long sentences and fines will also apply to those found to incite hatred or contempt towards the coup leaders. Armored vehicles have already been deployed in major cities as fears of crackdown on anti-coup protests mount. Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan has accused the US of supporting Kurdish militants blamed for the killing of 13 kidnapped Turks in Iraq. Speaking in Ankara, Erdogan said the US condemnation of the killings is a joke. The death toll from COVID-19 in Mexico has topped 174,000 after the country reported over 400 daily fatalities. In Brazil, over 700 people lost their lives overnight, with more than 239,000 deaths since the pandemic began. While Pakistan has reported more than 1,000 cases and 26 deaths in the past 24 hours. This has pushed the nationwide toll to 12,333. Globally, the virus has claimed nearly 2.4 million lives and infected more than 108 million people. And in cricket, England need another 429 runs to win the second test against India in Chennai. The visitors ended the day 3 on 53 for 3 after bowling India out for 286 in the second innings. They are currently leading the 4-match series 1-0. Those were the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg says the Taliban must do more to fulfill their commitments to the Doha peace deal. At a news conference, he said the group must break all ties with the international terrorists for any possible troop withdrawal by May. The US committed to withdraw 12,000 foreign troops within 14 months in the agreement signed in February last year. This led the Taliban and the government to start inter-Afghan talks aimed at ending the decades-long war. But now the Taliban and the US are accusing each other of not fulfilling their commitments. Earlier in a statement, the Taliban said the US airstrikes continue despite a significant reduction in violence by the group. Islamabad says New Delhi has militarized the Indian Ocean, of which Pakistan is an important stakeholder. Addressing the International Maritime Conference in Karachi, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said India's hostile policies are a threat to regional and global peace and security. Qureshi congratulated the Pakistan Navy for successfully conducting the 2021 drills, in which more than 40 countries participated. He said one of the Pakistan Navy's ships is currently on a humanitarian supply mission to Africa. The foreign minister said there is a need to safeguard the world's oceans as a global public commodity. Qureshi called for the ocean resources-driven economy to be brought to the center of the national paradigm. The foreign minister pointed out that coastal tourism can contribute up to $4 billion to Pakistan's economy. Meanwhile, Navy Chief Admiral Amjad Khan Niazi said efforts are being made to secure the maritime boundaries of Pakistan. Pakistan's army says a soldier was martyred during an exchange of fire with the terrorists in southwestern Balochistan province. The army's media wing says the terrorists attacked the checkpoint installed to secure the N85 national highway near Hoshab. In a statement, the ISPR said the area around the post in Kachlate district has been cordoned off. It said escape routes have been blocked to apprehend fleeing terrorists. No group or individual has claimed the responsibility for the attack yet. In India, another farmer, Ramji Lal, has committed suicide amid mass protests against the Modi government's new laws. His family says Lal had been assaulted by the electricity department officials and served an inflated power bill. More in this report.
Ramji Lal is the latest of over 200 farmers who have lost their lives in 3 months of agitation. The victim's family says he hanged himself after officials turned up at the house, disgraced him, and handed him an electricity bill of $2,067. Lal's family and friends placed the body in front of the government office, refusing to proceed with his last rites. They demanded a police case should be registered against the officials, but were denied. Meanwhile, farm unions said they are intensifying their movement to repeal the laws that expose them to corporate exploitation. 40 leaders spearheading the agitation against the Modi government will tour the country to drum up support. On Sunday, Mahatma Gandhi's granddaughter, Tara Gandhi, visited the farmers protesting at Delhi border and extended support for their movement.
In the Indian cities of Bengaluru and Mumbai, scores of people have protested against the arrest of a climate change activist, Disha Ravi. The 22-year-old was arrested for sharing a document on social media to support the ongoing farmers' protest against the new farm laws.
Is to allow us to protest peacefully without arresting people who are just helping. It's not a crime, it's not even sedition.
The protesters were calling for the immediate release of detained young climate activist Disha Ravi. Police say she shared the same document which was first posted by Swedish teenage activist Greta Thunberg. Authorities have also issued arrest warrants for 2 other activists, Nikita Jacob and Shantanu Maluk. The police action has been condemned in India and beyond. Opposition parties called Ravi's arrest harassment and an attack on democracy.
Well, the toolkit that Disha made was just like an information sheet, you know, and I think people should have the right to access information and come to their own decisions without people providing such information being arrested.
Meena Harris, the niece of U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris, also criticized India for silencing activists.
I think the whole intent of the government is to, through this process, threaten the young in India, that if you speak against the government, you will be dealt with in this fashion. So it is to silence the youth of the country. That's the intent, according to me, of proceeding against Disha Ravi.
The farmers' protest attracted international attention earlier this month when several prominent celebrities, including pop star Rihanna, voiced their support. Critics have accused the government of using the massive demonstrations to escalate a crackdown on free speech.
Moving on, Myanmar's military has warned anti-coup protesters that they could face up to 20 years in prison if they obstruct the armed forces. Long sentences and fines will also apply to those found to incite hatred or contempt towards the coup leaders. More in this report.
Thousands of people across the country have been protesting against the military, which took power earlier this month. They are demanding the immediate release of ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi and the restoration of democracy. Coup leaders say they will return power after holding a fresh election once the one-year emergency period ends. But the promise has yet failed to calm the angry protesters. Now the ruling military has warned the demonstrators of a strict action if they don't end their strike and return to work. Armored vehicles have already been deployed in major cities as fears of a crackdown mount. Meanwhile, the international community, including the United Nations, have urged the coup leaders to refrain from violence.
Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan has accused the U.S. of supporting Kurdish militants blamed for the killing of 13 kidnapped Turks in Iraq. Speaking in Ankara, Erdogan said the U.S. condemnation of the killings is a joke. More in this report.
The U.S.-Turkey relationship is in shambles due to a range of issues, including Ankara's purchase of the Russian defense system and its energy exploration row with Greece in the eastern Mediterranean. And now the killing of 13 Turks in Iraq has further soured their relations. The bodies of 13 Turks were found on Sunday when Turkish soldiers were conducting an operation against PKK militants in northern Iraq. Hours later, the U.S. said it condemned the killings if it was confirmed that responsibility lay with the PKK. The veiled condemnation angered Turkey, with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan saying that the U.S. must part ways with the PKK militants.
Now there is a statement made by the United States. It is a joke where you're not supposed to stand against the terrorists, the PKK, the YPG, and PYD. You clearly support them and stand behind them.
Erdogan said nobody could criticize Turkey's cross-border operations in Syria or Iraq after the killings. He added that countries must choose between Turkey and the militants.
If we are together with you in NATO, if we are to continue our unity in the world and in NATO, then you will act sincerely towards us. Then you will stand with us, not with the terrorists.
Also, the Turkish Foreign Ministry summoned the U.S. ambassador to convey Turkey's reaction to the U.S. statement. Turkey launched a military operation against the PKK in northern Iraq last week. The U.S. and the EU have designated the PKK a terrorist organization, but U.S. forces in Syria are fighting alongside Kurdish YPG fighters who Turkey considers to be linked to the PKK. The PKK has waged a decades-old insurgency in the mainly Kurdish southeast Turkey, in which more than 40,000 people have been killed.
Iran has threatened to further scale back its commitments under the 2015 nuclear deal if the parties fail to fulfill their obligations, referring to an Iranian law that obliges the government to harden its nuclear stance. Foreign Minister Saeed Khatibzadeh said Tehran has no option but to respect the law. The spokesperson added it does not mean ending all inspections by the UN nuclear watchdog. However, he said that Tehran has not sought and will never seek nuclear weapons. Earlier, Iran's intelligence minister had said persistent Western pressure could push Tehran to fight back and seek nuclear weapons. The Saudi-led military coalition in Yemen says it has intercepted and destroyed another armed Houthi drone. Saudi state media quoted a coalition spokesperson as saying the drone was the latest in a series of attempts by the militias to target civilians. It said this was the sixth such attempt in the last 5 days. Earlier on Sunday, the group offered to halt their attacks on the kingdom if the coalition forces agreed to stop airstrikes on Houthis in return. Syria's army says the country's air defenses have intercepted Israeli aggression over Damascus. An army statement says Israeli military planes flew over the Golan Heights to hit the targets on the edge of the capital. The statement added the air defenses downed most of the missiles. No casualties were reported in the latest attack. There are witness accounts of large explosions on the southern edge of Damascus, an area where militias are entrenched. A Syrian military defector said the bombing raids hit a major army division in the town of Kosovo. Israel's military did not immediately comment on the strike. More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. The death toll from COVID-19 in Mexico has exceeded 174,000 after the country reported over 400 daily fatalities. In Brazil, over 700 people lost their lives overnight, with more than 239,000 deaths since the pandemic began. Globally, the virus has claimed nearly 2.4 million lives and infected more than 108 million people. More on this report.
Even after a significant drop in the new infections worldwide, health experts say precautions to slow the spread of COVID-19 must remain in place. Average daily new cases in the United States have dipped below 100,000 for the first time in months. But the director of U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has warned it is too soon to lift the mask mandate. Dr. Rochelle Walensky also anticipates that every American who wants to be vaccinated will be able to get a jab by the end of summer. In Peru, a day after the health minister resigned, Foreign Minister Elizabeth Astet has also stepped down after acknowledging she received a dose of the vaccine outside of clinical trials and before the national immunization program began. Brazil has confirmed cases of the UK variant of the coronavirus after sequencing test samples taken on December 31st. Meanwhile, Brazil's Amazon region, the birthplace of a new, reportedly 3 times more contagious variant, has received COVID-19 vaccines as the country steps up immunizations to better protect at-risk indigenous residents.
Here at Polo Base Makira, we have topped 90% of indigenous residents who have had their first vaccine. We can't reach 100% because of factors that prevent some indigenous residents from taking the vaccine.
In Europe, to avert a chaotic anti-coronavirus lockdown measures, the Czech government has reached a last-minute deal with regional governors to call a new state of emergency for 14 days. Italy has prevented ski resorts from opening a day before skiing was due to be allowed for the first time this winter season. Meanwhile, once the hardest-hit country in the region, the United Kingdom, is vigorously taking steps to eliminate the virus. A hotel quarantine rule for arrivals from high-risk COVID countries has come into force. The first in the world to approve a vaccine, the British government has also achieved an ambitious target of reaching 15 million jabs by the 15th of February.
Today, we have reached a significant milestone in the United Kingdom's national vaccination programme. On the 8th of December, just after 6:30 in the morning, this country's first coronavirus jab was delivered safely into the arms of Margaret Keenan at University Hospital in Coventry. In the following 2 months, this country has achieved an extraordinary feat, administering a total of 15 million jabs into the arms of some of the most vulnerable people in the country.
South Korea has eased some of its strictest social distancing rules for businesses, but kept limits on private gatherings as it prepares to announce a vaccine plan. Australia has also confirmed that a national vaccine rollout is on track to begin next week. The country has suspended quarantine-free travel with neighbouring New Zealand after new community cases were detected in Auckland.
In Pakistan, 26 more people have lost their lives to COVID-19 in the past 24 hours. This has pushed the death toll to 12,333. The health ministry says 1,048 people tested positive for the virus overnight. The country has recorded more than 564,000 cases since the pandemic began, out of which 525,000 people have recovered. Health officials say there are currently close to 26,000 active cases in the country. Meanwhile, the UK has announced that Pakistan will receive 7 million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine within 2 months. In a statement, the British High Commission said Pakistan will get 17 million doses of the jab through the COVAX facility. Pakistan has started the process of registering citizens 65 and above for the COVID-19 vaccination drive in March. In a tweet, Federal Minister for Planning and Development Asad Umar said the government has designated 582 facilities for the inoculation process, supported by digital mechanisms. Pakistan has registered record growth in remittances during the current fiscal year. In a tweet, Prime Minister Imran Khan said that transactions from overseas Pakistanis increased by 19% over the past month. He said year on year, this marks an increase of 24% in money sent by expatriates. The remittances for January clocked at $2.27 billion, making the 8th straight month with more than $2 billion in transfers. The Prime Minister thanked overseas Pakistanis for contributing to the economic growth of the country. Khan pointed out that the country's industrial sector is also showing sustained growth. He said large-scale manufacturing saw another double-digit year-on-year growth in December, with a cumulative growth above 8%. Poland's envoy to Pakistan, Piotr Oplienski, says Pakistan has huge potential for exports in the European Union. He was exclusively talking to Indus News following an event in Islamabad. Oplienski said Poland wants to bolster trade, economic and energy cooperation with Pakistan. He said Pakistan is deemed as a prestigious member of the Generalized Scheme of Preferences Plus community.
Pakistani exports to Poland are still significant on the same level. We have achieved already €500 million turnover by 2018-2019, but right now it's becoming less. So we are now working for the future cooperation and contacts, which will come because the pandemic will be over, and that's why we would like to continue right now with agreements which we have signed in recent past. The most significant was on the cooperation between the Polish Finance Commission and Pakistan State Bank for the modern banking, for the flow of capital as well, and for the future investments. That, as we today shared at the press conference, Poland is open for Pakistan investment and also for supporting very much Pakistan standing as a country which is granted GSP Plus for the exports to Europe. Our area of cooperation in Pakistan is focused most on energy sector right now. Polish oil and gas company is working in Pakistan for more than 20 years in the Sindh and Balochistan area, already producing gas for the local network. But Poland is also the country of a rich, long tradition of coal mining. So in this area, we are also capable of providing the modern technologies, clean coal technologies to Pakistan. And the other, which is now a quite significant area of possible cooperation, is food processing, as Pakistan has a variety of fruits and vegetables, and the food processing industry from Poland might be of great use as well.
Leaders of France and 5 Sahel nations have begun a 2-day summit to discuss anti-insurgency operations in Chad. Burkina Faso, Chad, Mali, Mauritania and Niger are attending the summit in the capital N'Djamena. French President Emmanuel Macron is attending the summit via video link. The meeting comes a year after France boosted its Sahel deployment. But militias remain in control of vast swathes of territory in the region amid unrelenting attacks. The pro-Madrid Socialist Party has claimed a narrow victory against the secessionist Republican left in the Sunday vote in Catalonia. With over 99% of the ballots counted, both the parties are set to command an equal number of seats in the region's 135-seat parliament. Exit polls show the Socialists won over 625,000 votes, giving them 33 seats in the legislature. The Republican left only claimed around 508,000 votes, but is also expected to have 33 lawmakers in the assembly. 2 other pro-secession parties, the centre-right Gents and left-wing CUP, got 41 seats between them. In total, the separatist bloc has boosted its parliamentary presence from 70 lawmakers in 2017 to 74 following the Sunday vote. In Kosovo, preliminary results of the parliamentary elections indicate that opposition party Remittances is set to win. The Democratic Party of Kosovo is forecast to secure second place, while the ruling Democratic League of Kosovo is likely to come third. After 87% of the votes counted, the State Election Commission showed Remittances in the lead with 47.8%. But results indicate the party is not likely to secure a majority of 61 seats in the parliament and will need to find a coalition partner. But Remittances leader Albin Kurti has pledged to fight corruption and has a hardline stance on border disputes with Serbia. Kurti says the main priority of his party is justice and creating jobs. On Valentine's Day, a falling meteor put extra romance in the air for the people in Melbourne. The meteor lit up the sky, giving the people of the city a sight to behold. Upon entering the atmosphere, it started burning, creating a bright flare across the sky. A witness said the colors were most amazing to see in person. The small rock was traveling at about 40 kilometers per second. Progress 77, a Russian cargo ship, blasted off towards the International Space Station aboard a Soyuz rocket. The ship, launched from the Baikonur Cosmodrome base in Kazakhstan, is carrying supplies for the crew currently on board the ISS. NASA says Progress 77 will connect to the station's peace docking compartment after a two-day journey. The unmanned spacecraft will remain docked to the space station's Russian segment until later this year. In China, several village resorts have transformed into winter wonderlands with spectacular light shows for the Lunar New Year.
Jixian village in eastern Jiangxi province glows with warm lights at night as lanterns illuminate the village's traditional Chinese buildings. Colorful lanterns and icicle lights hang across the alleys, creating a mesmerizing scene that blends modernity and tradition. Meanwhile, a nearby pond hosts a spectacular laser light show where spotlight beams create massive lightsabers in the sky. Further north, in Jilin province, a village in Dunha city has been transformed into an immersive winter wonderland decked out with kaleidoscopic lights. Visitors can check out 16 sets of mammoth snow sculptures in the shapes of castles, ancient Chinese city walls, and animals. Under the moonlight, young tourists cheer and dance around a bonfire while a firework display lights up the sky.
Renowned Palestinian poet Modi Baghuti has died at the age of 77 in the Jordanian capital Amman. A champion of the Palestinian cause, he spent years of his life writing about his homeland and the Israeli occupation. More in this report.
Modi Baghuti was born 4 years before the State of Israel was created in a village near Ramallah. He was studying in Cairo when the 1967 Arab-Israeli War broke out, leading Palestinian society to total destruction. He did not return to his birthplace for another 30 years and spent much of his life in exile.
You know, when you write a poem, you don't know who's going to read it. Sometimes it is influential and felt immediately. Sometimes, after 100 years, you will find somebody carrying a line of your poem and going to the streets, making it a leading line for a revolution.
Baghuti's sense of being forever uprooted was examined in his memoir, I Saw Ramallah. His fellow Palestinian writer, Edward Said, described the novel as one of the finest existential accounts of Palestinian displacement. He also published 12 poetry collections over the years. He was a long-serving Palestine Liberation Organization representative, but kept his distance from political parties. With his demise, the Palestinians and Arab world would surely have lost a symbol of national struggle and creativity.
From the day I was born till now, in my despair, I remember that there is life after death. There is life after death, and I have no problem. But I ask, oh my God, is there life before death?
It's time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Lows and the highs of the business world now. Oil prices have soared to their highest in over a year as fears of heightened tensions in the Middle East prompted fresh buying. Brent crude is up close to 2% at $63.76 per barrel. The U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures gained more than 2% to $60.75 a barrel. Over the last week, oil prices have gained around 5%. The increase follows Saudi Arabia's unilateral decision earlier to cut production. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala has been appointed the new chief of the World Trade Organization. She is the first woman and African to ever lead the Switzerland-based institution. 3 months ago, her WTO candidacy was rejected by the then Trump administration. However, the appointment was cleared when President Joe Biden announced his support for the 66-year-old a few days ago. As Director General, she faces a daunting task to counter protectionism heightened by the coronavirus pandemic. And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus Special.